They say old age makes you forget, but sometimes it just teaches you what's worth remembering. I was raised in a world where women were expected to stay quiet, to smooth over the rough edges of their husbands' tempers, to smile even when their hearts ached. I learned that silence could keep a family together, even if it slowly unraveled the person holding it all in. Now at 78, I've buried my husband and given 40 years to a son who looks at me like I'm a stranger in his house. They think I'm fading, that the names I misplace and the words I fumble are proof my mind's dissolving. But forgetting isn't always an accident. Sometimes it's armor. That night, the wind screamed against our old Colorado home, rattling the siding like it wanted in. My joints burned with the cold, but I ignored the ache and reached for the salt. "Marcus, could you pass me that napkin?" I said. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush bone. "Who's Marcus?" Haley snapped, spinning around from the sink, her arms crossed like a warden's. I blinked. "I meant Paul," I murmured. "Just slipped my mind." "Sure," she said, her voice sharp. "You just forgot your husband's name and called your son by your old lover's instead. That's not foggy memory, Joanna. That's pathetic." Paul didn't defend me. He just set down his fork, the metal clicking against the plate. "Dad hated that man," he said quietly, as though he needed to remind me of it. Their laughter bit deeper than any insult. My grandson, phone in hand, was already recording. "Yo guys," he whispered to his camera. "Grandma just called Dad by her ghost boyfriend's name. Guess she's haunted." The room echoed with their amusement, my family's voices twisting into something cruel and foreign. I sat there, still and small, staring at the empty space on the wall where my husband's portrait had once hung. They'd taken it down, said it was clutter. I didn't cry. I never do in front of people who see tears as weakness. But that night something inside me stirred. Maybe I was losing memories, but I hadn't lost my awareness. I saw them, their contempt, their impatience, their eagerness to label me broken. They thought I was slipping. They had no idea I was waking up. Rehook. They mocked my forgetfulness, but if they'd looked closer, they might have realized what I was truly hiding. I went to bed that night without a word. No one noticed when I stood, knees cracking, voice quiet as I whispered, "Good night." They didn't answer, too busy scrolling, too busy laughing at their own cruelty. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of the bed in what they call the guest room. Imagine that, a guest in the house I helped pay for, in the family I raised. The moonlight stretched across my wrinkled hands, trembling just enough to betray the anger underneath. I opened my closet and reached for the small box I'd hidden behind an old blanket. Inside was a photograph, its edges worn, the glass cracked. My husband, Richard, smiling in uniform. The picture was faded, but his eyes still held the same secret they always had. The one I swore I'd never tell. I pressed the photo to my chest. They thought I was broken, but that night I made a promise. If they wanted to treat me like I was losing my mind, I'd let them. Because sometimes the easiest way to hide the truth is to let people believe the lie. 2 years earlier, I'd had a minor stroke, a warning shot, the doctor called it. The fog that followed was brief, the kind that comes and goes. But Haley used it like ammunition. Every forgotten name, every misplaced word became another tally on her chart. She even made a list taped to the refrigerator titled Mom's Memory Mistakes. I saw it every morning next to the grocery list and magnets shaped like wine bottles. Then came the phone calls. "Yes, doctor, this is Haley Bradford," she'd say sweetly. "My mother-in-law's showing signs of severe cognitive decline. She's confusing people, losing track of time. We're worried." She wasn't worried. She was preparing to take everything. It wasn't hard to piece together her plan. I saw the pamphlet she left half hidden in the kitchen drawer. Legal guides for guardianship, templates for declaring mental incompetence. She wasn't waiting for me to fade away naturally. She was speeding up the process. That's when I decided I wouldn't go quietly. I called someone I could still trust, a former student of mine, Dr. Marcia Bennett, now a psychologist with her own practice. "Marcia," I said into the phone, my voice shaking, "I need you. Not as a friend. As a witness." Rehook. Marcia called back the next day, and what she told me would change everything about how I fought back. Marcia met me for coffee 3 towns over, where no one would recognize either of us. She looked older, wiser. A woman who had learned how to listen. I told her everything. The recordings, the mockery, the chart on the fridge. When I finished, she slid a folder across the table, her eyes steady on mine. "I've been monitoring your cognition for the past 2 years," she said. "Every visit, every test. You're not incompetent, Joanna. You're grieving, not fading. You're sharp, and someone's trying to make you doubt that." Her words unlocked something in me. I wasn't crazy. I was being cornered. Within a week, Marcia helped me reach out to a man named Frank LeBlanc, an estate trustee who specialized in protecting seniors from financial abuse. Together, we created a trust in my name, one no one in my family knew existed. From that moment, I stopped defending myself and started playing their game. I began to forget things deliberately. I asked about my wedding ring I never wore. I called Haley by the wrong name, sometimes Margaret, sometimes Martha. I left grocery lists half-finished, wandered rooms humming to myself. The more I pretended to crumble, the bolder they became. One night, I overheard Haley through the vent. "She's slipping fast," she whispered. "If we push just a little more, the power of attorney will be ours before Christmas." Paul sighed. "She's my mother, Haley. I don't want to hurt her." "You're not," she said smoothly. "You're helping her. Think about our future." That was when I realized my son wasn't cruel, just cowardly. He'd rather believe her lies than question them, so I kept acting. I took notes day after day, in a small brown notebook hidden behind the pantry. Dates, conversations, every threat they muttered when they thought I couldn't hear. Then I found my late husband's old toolbox and smiled. Inside was a tiny voice-activated recorder. I placed it under the dining table, right where their plotting began each night. Let them think I was losing myself. Every word they spoke was now mine to keep. A few weeks later, I woke to find the house had changed. My husband's portrait was gone. The walls, once filled with family photos, now displayed glossy prints of Haley holding wine glasses and fake laughter. "Where's Richard's photo?" I asked quietly. "In the garage," she said without looking up. "Time to declutter." That night I went to find it. Rehook. What I discovered in that cold garage, and what followed after, showed me just how far Haley was willing to go to erase my past. The garage smelled of dust and paint thinner, the kind of air that makes you cough if you breathe too deeply. I shuffled through boxes labeled old family stuff, searching until my hands brushed cracked glass. There he was, Richard, smiling softly from a frame that had once hung proudly in the living room. They'd buried him under camping gear and broken decorations like he'd never mattered. I held the photo to my chest, whispering, "They can take your picture off the wall. Love, but not out of me." I hid the photo inside my old Bible between Psalms and Proverbs, the same place I'd always tucked my truth. But the cruelty didn't stop. A few days later, my grandson's laughter echoed down the hall. I peeked around the corner just as he showed his friends a TikTok. It was me, pacing the living room, calling out for Richard. The caption read, "When Granny talks to ghosts and blames you for stealing the walls." The comments were worse, strangers calling me possessed, senile, even funny. My grief had become their entertainment. That night, while they scrolled through their phones, I sat knitting at the table, quiet as a shadow. When no one looked, I slipped a new recorder beneath the fruit bowl. By the end of the week, I had more than humiliation, I had evidence. I heard everything. Haley's voice, calm and calculated. "She keeps asking where the old photos went." I told her they burned in the attic leak last year. The attic never leaked, but she won't remember that. Another day, I signed the papers. "She'll never know." Told the realtor she has advanced dementia. She was selling my house in Pueblo, the one Richard built with his bare hands, the one where our roses still bloomed every spring. My name forged, my history erased. But she made one mistake. The sale froze before it went through. The agent flagged a secondary trustee, someone named LeBlanc. I smiled when I overheard her curse under her breath. Frank had done his job. That's when Haley's mask began to crack. She grew frantic, whispering threats during car rides and doctor visits. "If you don't sign, I'll have you committed," she hissed one day. I pressed record and smiled faintly. She thought she was trapping me. She didn't realize I'd already built the cage around her. Rehook. But even as I gathered proof, I knew I couldn't win alone, not yet. To finish what I'd started, I needed someone who could turn my truth into something the world couldn't ignore. When you've been silenced long enough, your truth starts to ache like an unhealed wound. I knew I couldn't keep mine hidden forever. So I reached out to the one person I believed would understand what it meant to be forgotten and found again. Elena Torres, a former student of mine who had grown into a celebrated author of memoirs. We met in a small cafe beyond the county line. She recognized me instantly. "Mrs. Bradford," she said softly. Her eyes filled with the kind of empathy you can't fake. I told her everything, the forged papers, the recordings, the way they twisted my forgetfulness into madness. When I slid my notebook in the USB drives across the table, she didn't flinch. "You're not losing your mind," she said. "You're remembering out loud. Let's make them listen." And so we did. Together we wrote When Memory Speaks. It wasn't just a story, it was my testimony. Elena pushed me to reclaim my voice, not as the trembling widow they mocked, but as the woman who had endured in silence and finally refused to vanish. When the book found its publisher, it bore a name the world hadn't seen in 50 years. Mary Ember. The pen name I used in my youth when I secretly wrote stories about women like me. Forgotten women. Silenced women. Now Mary Ember had returned, and this time she was real. The memoir caught attention fast, and not just from readers. A judge, upon reading parts of it, reopened my guardianship case. The evidence we presented in court, the recordings, the legal documents, the psychologist's reports, tore through Haley's lies like sunlight through fog. The verdict came swiftly. I was competent, fully capable, and the victim of calculated abuse. Haley's attempt at control turned into an investigation of fraud. She left the courthouse pale and shaking. Paul couldn't meet my eyes. And my grandson, once so quick to laugh, was silent for the first time in months. I didn't celebrate. I simply breathed. Months later, I founded the Bradford Fund for Elder Justice, a trust that offered free legal help to seniors facing family exploitation. I gave away everything I owned except peace, and that I finally had. Sometimes I still hear echoes of their voices at night, but they no longer haunt me. They remind me that silence is not surrender. It's the seed of a storm waiting for the right moment to speak. Now, when I sign copies of When Memory Speaks, I write the same line each time. For the ones they called forgetful, may your truth never fade. Because this was never just my story. It was the story of every woman who remembered when the world told her to forget. Rehook. And if you're listening now, maybe it's your turn to remember too. It's strange, waking up in a house that finally feels like it's listening. The walls don't echo with tension anymore. They breathe with me, quiet, steady, forgiving. The mornings arrive soft and gold over the hills outside Boulder, spilling across my kitchen table where a cup of tea cools beside a stack of letters. They come every week now, written by women I've never met. Some write in trembling script. Others type on lined paper torn from notebooks. Each one begins the same way. I thought I was the only one. They tell me about daughters who won't call, husbands who control the bank accounts, sons who dismiss their pain as confusion. I read each letter slowly, whispering their names aloud so they won't disappear between the lines. Then I write back. Sometimes it's a page, sometimes just a single sentence. You are not invisible anymore. The Bradford Fund has grown faster than any of us expected. There's a team now, lawyers, counselors, even volunteers who travel to nursing homes with portable recorders, helping people preserve their stories. I call them memory keepers. They don't save memories because they fear forgetting. They save them because truth deserves a witness. As for Paul, I haven't seen him in over a year. The first time he called after the trial, I let it go to voicemail. His message was short. "Mom, I'm sorry. I listened twice, then deleted it." Some apologies come too late to be useful, but not too late to be remembered. Haley, I heard, left town. I don't wish her misery. I just wish her honesty, the kind she never gave anyone else. Sometimes at dusk, I walk to the garden behind my cottage. The air smells like pine and earth and second chances. I planted new roses this spring. Deep red, the same color Richard loved. I still talk to him when the wind moves just right. We did it, I tell him. They tried to silence us, but the truth made its way out anyway. When I go back inside, I see my book on the shelf, When Memory Speaks. Its spine worn from being opened too many times. I touch it, not out of pride but gratitude. It's proof that silence, when kept long enough, can turn into something stronger than noise. So if you're still listening, still doubting, still waiting for permission to speak, take it now. The world may not remember your name, but your truth has weight. Let it fall. Let it echo. Rehook. Because sometimes the real secret isn't what we forget, it's what we finally dare to remember. It's been 3 years since the trial, though time feels gentler now. I mark the seasons not by calendars but by the colors of the hills. Green in spring, gold in summer, rust by fall and silver in winter. My body is slower, yes, but my mind has never been clearer. The Bradford Fund has outgrown the tiny office I first rented. We've opened chapters in 5 states. I still sit in on meetings when I can, though the young ones run things better than I ever could. They speak with the urgency I once swallowed. They carry recorders, not handbags. They tell the elderly, "Your story matters." A week ago, a girl came to see me, no older than 20. She clutched a notebook in a trembling courage. "My grandmother's memory is fading," she said. "But she wants to tell her story before it's gone." I looked at her and for a heartbeat I saw myself, that same mix of fear and fire. I handed her one of our recording kits and said, "Then don't wait. Begin now. Every truth saved is another silence broken." When she left, I found myself thinking of Sophie, the quiet neighbor girl who once slipped my medication through the fence. She's studying law now, interning with our foundation. She sends me photos from courthouses and small-town libraries, places where people line up to speak, trembling but unafraid. I keep every photo pinned above my desk. Some nights I still wake before dawn and make tea for 2. I pour 1 cup for myself, 1 for Richard. The steam curls upward, carrying whispers I like to imagine belong to him. "You did fine," he says in the spaces between the wind. And maybe that's true, maybe I finally did. The letters still arrive, stacked in bundles tied with ribbon. Some come from women, others from sons and daughters who learn too late what silence costs. I answer each one slowly. My handwriting shakes more these days, but I don't mind. The tremor reminds me I'm still alive, still writing. Tomorrow, I'll visit the old house in Pueblo one last time. The roses I planted decades ago still bloom there, stubborn as memory. I'll stand in the garden and whisper a thank you to the woman I used to be, and to the secret that saved me. Because sometimes survival isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about remembering it with enough grace to teach someone else how to heal. Rehook. And if another woman reads this someday wondering whether her story is worth telling, I hope she hears me whisper back, yes. The morning light slips through my curtains like a soft confession. The world is quiet again. Not the suffocating silence of being ignored, but the kind that feels like peace. I move slowly now, every step, every breath has weight. Yet nothing feels heavy anymore. On the table sits a single envelope, cream-colored and sealed with wax. Inside is my last letter, not to Paul or Haley but to Sophie. I've asked her to continue the fund, to protect the ones whose voices still tremble in the dark. She doesn't know it yet, but she's already the next keeper of the truth. Outside, the first snow of winter has begun to fall, soft and deliberate. I wrap my old coat tighter around me, the one Richard bought decades ago, and step onto the porch. The air bites, clean and bright, carrying that mountain scent of pine and possibility. I sit in my rocking chair and close my eyes. The wind hums through the trees like an old hymn. I can almost hear Richard's laughter on it, low and steady. "You did it, Joe," he seems to say. "You found your voice." I think of everything that's come from one forgotten name. The mockery, the lies, the courtroom, the book, the hundreds of letters that followed. What began as humiliation became a movement. Funny how grief, when spoken aloud, can turn into something like freedom. Inside, the kettle whistles faintly. I don't rush to it. I've rushed enough in my life. I watch the snow instead. Tiny flakes drifting, landing, melting into the earth. Each one vanishes, but together they cover the ground in light. Maybe that's what memory really is. Small pieces of pain and beauty falling until they make something whole. I pick up my pen one last time and open my journal. The paper smells faintly of cedar and thyme. I write slowly, carefully. If they call it forgetting, let them. I know what it truly is, remembering softly. The words blur a little as I finish the line. I close the notebook, set it beside the empty teacup and smile. Somewhere beyond the hills, the sun breaks through the clouds, scattering gold over the snow. The world keeps turning. Stories keep being told. And for once, I don't feel the need to hold on to every word. I've already spoken enough. Rehook/final line. And if someone finds these pages long after I'm gone, tell them this: truth never dies. It only waits for another voice to give it breath. A year has passed since Joanna Bradford's porch went still. The cottage sits at the edge of the Pine Ridge, windows fogged, roses asleep under snow. The neighbors say they still see a light burning in the front room some evenings. A single lamp glowing beside an open book. I know that house better than anyone. My name is Sophie Lenz and she left it to me. The first night I moved in, I found her journal on the kitchen table. The last page still damp where a teacup once rested. Beneath it was a note written in her graceful looping hand. Keep listening. So I do. Every morning I walk the same path she loved. Down to the garden where the wind hums between the hills. I read her words aloud to the air. Stories of silence turned into strength. Sometimes when the clouds break, I swear I hear her answer back, soft as the snow. You matter. The Bradford Fund still thrives. We've opened new branches in towns that never had anyone to speak for their elders. Every week we train volunteers, most of them women, to record testimonies before they're lost. We call the project the Echo Room because that's what Joanna believed memory really was. The echo that refuses to fade. Letters arrive by the hundreds now, but they're addressed to her. I keep them all. When I answer, I sign both our names. It feels right. She started the conversation, I'm just keeping it alive. Sometimes Paul writes too. His letters are short, uncertain. He asks if I ever hear from his mother in dreams. I tell him the truth. Yes, not in words but in moments. Whenever I stand up for someone who's been dismissed, she's there. Whenever a frightened woman records her story for the first time, she's there too. On clear nights, I sit on that same porch with her old blanket around my shoulders. The wind moves through the trees, whispering pieces of her story back to me. I don't feel haunted, I feel guided. She didn't leave ghosts behind. She left courage. Before I go inside, I whisper the promise I made the day we buried her. I'll keep the lamp lit. Because that's what truth needs most, light and time. Rehook/closing echo. And if someday another girl finds this house and wonders who lived here before her, I hope she feels what I feel now, the quiet pulse of a woman's voice that never really stopped speaking. 10 years. That's how long it's been since Joanna's last sunrise. The cottage still stands, tucked beneath the whispering pines, its roof stitched with moss, its windows reflecting every color of the sky. Time has softened the place, but it hasn't erased it. Nothing real ever disappears, it only changes shape. I live here still. The rooms smell of old paper and lilac soap, the same way they did when I first crossed the threshold with shaking hands. Her rocking chair faces east. Each morning I sit there and read a single page from When Memory Speaks. I've read it so many times the spine sighs when it opens. The words feel different now, not like a warning but like a prayer. The Bradford Fund has become a movement. We partner with universities, nursing homes, community centers. We host story vigils, where families gather to record the memories of those who once thought no one was listening. Every vigil begins the same way. A lamp switched on, a moment of silence, and Joanna's favorite quote read aloud. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the space where truth learns how to breathe. Last winter, a young reporter visited to write about the project. She asked if I ever felt haunted living here. I smiled. Haunted? No. Guided, maybe. This isn't a ghost house. It's a breathing one. She laughed, then cried, and before she left, she whispered, I wish my grandmother had written her story. I told her it's never too late. Sometimes the living finish what the dead began. Paul sent one last letter before he passed. Inside was a photo of him and a short note. I see her in my dreams. She forgave me. I placed it beside Joanna's Bible and let it be. Forgiveness, I've learned, is its own kind of memory. Every year on the anniversary of her passing, we gather in the garden she planted. Volunteers, families, strangers, we read aloud one story each, then bury a copy beneath the roses. The earth keeps them safe, the way Joanna once kept her secrets. When the wind sweeps through, petals scatter like pages turning. Tonight, as the sun sinks behind the mountains, I light the same brass lamp she left me. Its glow spills across the porch and into the trees, steady and warm. If anyone passes by, they might think an old woman still sits here writing. In a way, she does. Her words live in every hand that lifts a pen against silence. Final rehook/closing line. Because stories like hers don't end. They echo forward, flickering through time, reminding each of us that memory once spoken becomes light that never goes out. I first learned her name on a cold afternoon in a public library. I was 17, shelving returned books, when a worn paperback slipped from the cart and landed open at my feet. When Memory Speaks by Mary Ember. The pages were creased, underlined, loved. I read the first line. They mocked my forgetfulness until they realized what I was hiding. I didn't move for almost an hour. That night, I took the book home and read until dawn. I'd never met Joanna Bradford, yet I could feel her sitting across from me. That quiet, relentless strength that comes only from surviving yourself. When morning broke, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. 2 years later, I applied for an internship at the Bradford Fund. On my first day, Sophie Lenz met me at the door. She was older than I'd imagined, silver strands threading her dark hair, her eyes carrying both exhaustion and peace. "You found your way here through the book, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded. "Then you already understand our purpose." Now I travel across small towns with a recorder in my bag, gathering stories before they vanish. Some people tremble when they speak. Others pour out decades in a single breath. Each voice joins the archive, a digital chorus of truths too long ignored. We store them on a server called Echo, built in Joanna's memory. Whenever I doubt myself, I visit her cottage. Sophie still keeps the lamp burning, though she's slowed down. The porch creaks beneath our feet as we drink tea and listen to the wind. "She'd like you," Sophie tells me sometimes. "You remind me of her." Last week, during a school outreach, a little girl raised her hand. "Why do old stories matter?" she asked. I told her. Because if we stop telling them, we start believing the lies that replaced them. She smiled like she just learned a secret worth keeping. That evening, I wrote in my journal. Her voice reached me years after she was gone. Proof that memory doesn't end. It travels. The sun was setting when I left the office, the sky streaked orange and violet. I turned once toward the mountains where her cottage rests. The lamp's glow was faint but visible, a heartbeat of gold against the dark. Final rehook/closing echo. And somewhere, far beyond the hills, I like to think Joanna Bradford smiles, not because she was remembered, but because remembering finally became contagious. Some stories end quietly, folding into the hush of their own peace. Others linger, not as noise but as resonance. Joanna Bradford's story was never about loss or revenge. It was about the way truth, once spoken, refuses to die. It grows roots in strangers, blooms in places where silence once ruled. Years have passed since her last letter was written, but her words keep moving. They drift through libraries, through podcasts, through trembling hands that underline the same sentence again and again. Silence isn't weakness. It's where we gather the strength to speak. The Bradford Fund now reaches across oceans. Volunteers from places Joanna never saw, Kenya, Norway, India, record the voices of elders who feared being forgotten. Their stories travel through cables and satellites, landing in digital archives where future generations will find them. And when they press play, they will hear what she always wanted them to hear. Not pity, not pain, but endurance. Every recording begins with a ritual. A small lamp is lit, just like the one she kept on her porch. The interviewer speaks the same words Sophie once whispered. "We remember you now. Speak freely." Somewhere, perhaps in the space between time and memory, Joanna smiles. She never wanted statues or grand memorials, only to be heard, and to leave behind enough courage for someone else to use. There's a rumor, unverified but often told by the locals near Boulder, that on certain winter nights, a warm glow can still be seen through the cottage window. They say it's just the caretaker forgetting to switch off the lamp. But those who believe in echoes know better. They say it's the light that never went out, the one she lit not for herself, but for whoever needed to find the way. Because every truth leaves a trace. Every whispered confession, every written word, every moment of defiance becomes part of a collective heartbeat that outlives us all. Joanna's began with a single forgotten name, Marcus, and ended as a movement that taught the world how to remember. And so this is how her story closes. Not in silence but in echo. Not with an ending but with an invitation. Final line/fade out.